Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, so in this episode, I thought I'd try to say something about the Greek playwright and tragedian Euripides and his play called the Bacchae, written around 410 BC. It's no doubt one of his most provocative and dreadful tragedies ever staged. The story is based on the myth of King Pantheus of Thebes, who's punished by the god Dionysus for refusing to worship him. Now, this meant eventually being torn apart by the women of Thebes, which included his own mother. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. Okay, so I would say, and I think this is a pretty standard interpretation, that one of the major themes in the play centers around this distinction between culture on the one hand and nature on the other. And culture basically implies something like social practice or established institutions, and nature essentially refers to our instincts and our passions, the sorts of forces that we take to be generally restrained or curbed by these institutions and culture or civilization at large. And, really, I think you could say that the play ultimately centers around an even broader distinction. It's the distinction between order and chaos. Culture being a subset of order and nature being a subset of chaos. But I'll get to order and chaos specifically a bit later. Okay, so now, which one, culture or nature, was more important, and how they ought to be related to one another formed a major philosophical debate in Euripides' own time, in late 5th century Athens. I mean, some, for example, like Callicles and Thrasymachus in Plato's great dialogues, the Gorgias and the Republic, respectively, thought that we should follow nature and seek domination and enjoyment whenever we can. And others argued that no, we need custom and law. We need some Apollonian restraint to keep things in check. Well, okay, so what's the specific connection with all of this to Euripides' play here then? Well, basically, I think we can see Dionysus in the play in his being this great discharger of emotional energy and of bringing us closer to the life force of animals as representing nature. While, on the other hand, we can see Pantheus in his clear insistence on order and societal institutions as representing culture. So, in other words, what Pantheus holds is something like the view that culture or custom is a necessary restraint on nature. Now, why does he think this? Well, it might be because he's fearful or anxious of the sort of danger our passions and demands of the body bring, which is why he thinks they need to be reined in or inhibited by social control. Now, Dionysus and his followers seem to think something like the opposite. They think that our passions and our desires, essentially you could say our irrational side, are necessary parts of being human and so need to find expression. Now, I think that maybe part of Euripides' point is that if you try to totally inhibit the Dionysian, like a Pantheus initially tries to do, you do so at your own peril, both at the collective and at the individual level. In other words, if you lock yourself up behind these protective walls of culture, you will eventually experience a fragmentation of self. And that's because you need the Dionysian experience or outlet from time to time. And speaking of this fragmentation of self, let me diverge a bit here for one moment. So you see, I think that there's yet another distinction at work here in the play, one that many commentators have talked about, namely the distinction between the masculine and the feminine. So basically, one interpretation of Euripides is that what he's in part doing here is he's actually criticizing his society's accepted values, specifically those that suggest that being a man, male identity, means rejecting the feminine, which is what Pantheus seems to be doing. Actually, here it's really crucial to understand that the feminine was an important part of Dionysus's nature. To put it bluntly, he's marked by just this kind of dual nature. That's to say, he is a male god, but he has the earthiness and the softness and the passional side which the ancient Greeks generally associated with women. So maybe what Euripides is hinting at then is that a healthy identity is acquired by allowing in more duality, more integration, and more balance. In other words, maybe what he's telling us is that when men commit themselves to only so-called male qualities, as the ancient Greeks understood this, and like Pantheus seems to be doing in rejecting Dionysus, then they ignore and they repress a whole domain of human experience and human emotions. So this sexual differentiation, what it does is it fractures the male psyche. Or to put it another way, this very narrow masculine orientation is destructive of a more total male self-realization. That is, it just doesn't lead to wholeness. But what it leads to is dissolution and dismemberment, as it did both psychically and, well, literally for Pantheus. It seems for Euripides then, what we should try to strive for is a kind of sexual integration or harmonization, not separation. And that's because we actualize our full human potential when we accept and integrate all parts of us. By the way, something that Carl Jung, so many years later, counseled us about when he talked about the anima and the animus archetypes. Okay, but now let me return to what I was saying earlier about it being important to allow in the Dionysian experience from time to time, to let in the natural and the irrational, as opposed to just the civilized and the cultural. So as important as it is, I don't think that Euripides is recommending to us a total capitulation to the Dionysian. No, like almost all Greek thinkers and artists of this time, I think he's probably after some kind of balance or compromise. A balance between, as I mentioned earlier, a balance between order and Dionysian chaos. I think that that's what the play's message is ultimately about. It's ultimately about demonstrating the necessity of temperance and moderation in avoiding two extremes, namely the tyranny of excessive order on the one side and the destructive frenzy of passion on the other. I mean, I say balance because, after all, it's hard to live with wild abandon. Or as one commentator put it, it's hard to live off of the Dionysian vine if it's followed every single day by a horrendous hangover, right? And not only that, but I think that Euripides is aware of just how dangerous the Dionysian is, how it can get out of hand, especially when it concerns assimilation into a larger group. I mean, that's what the Dionysian experience essentially was. It was the breakdown of inhibition in group ecstasy or rapture, one usually involving lots of singing and dancing. I don't know, maybe something like our modern day raves. But it was an experience of release of barriers between oneself and others. But again, there is a potential danger here, and that's what Euripides clearly understood. He understood that to fall sway to the ecstasy of group passion can lead everyday people to commit atrocities of unthinkable horror. I mean, just think about all of the dangerous crowds or gangs out there and all of the crazy religious cults. This uncontrollable frenzy and destruction, this often just is the consequence of the extreme abandon of culture and rationality. So I guess my point is that while not always repressing our instincts and our passions and our vitality, we should keep in the back of our mind just how precariously close together Dionysus's life-enriching and life-destroying powers stand to each other. I mean, just ask Pantheus's mother, who, when finally returned to her good senses, finds herself holding her son's bloody head on a pike. Bye for now.